Now the top lane is either a bruiser or a tank, depending on preference and depending on champion selection. But in general, the solo lane on the top is a bruiser. And the reason why is because you need more damage on the top lane. And also because the only other lane we haven't talked about yet, and you're saying, well, we have a top lane is 1, and a middle lane is 1, and the bottom lane is 2, so where does the 5th one go? And the 5th one is the jungler. I've mentioned the jungler before, but a jungler is simply a player who, rather than going to a lane and killing the other team's minions, goes through the jungle and kills neutral monsters, like the wolves, the ancient golem, the wraiths, and the golem buddies, the ancient lizard. And they gain experience and gold that way. And they're sort of in a solo lane in the sense that they get all of the experience for the things that they kill, rather than having to share it like the AD carry and the support do. So in a sense, you have 3 solo lanes and 1 duo lane. And the tank typically is the one going in the jungle because a tank, by definition, will have at least one form of initiation or crowd control, which is important for ganks. The reason you want that is because if you only gank the top lane, it may not make a difference. You know, you have a tank is laning in the top lane and a bruiser comes and the tank can initiate the fight. But if you're talking about ganking any other kind of lane, it's important that the jungler, the one who is initiating the gank, has some way of doing so, of locking down one of the enemy players. And that typically falls to the tank in terms of their abilities. A tank will have a stun, or a slow, or a snare, or something to that effect. And so, typically, the tank ends up going into the jungle. Now, you have a bruiser in the top lane, you have a tank in the jungle, you have a caster in the mid lane, and you have AD carry and support in the bottom lane. And now you ask yourself, why does the bruiser get the top lane and the caster only gets the middle lane? I mean, couldn't you switch them around? And the answer is yes, technically you could. And in general, you probably wouldn't lose a whole lot of utility on the whole for your team. However, the main difference is that if a caster wins against his lane opponent, manages to kill him, or push the opponent, or push their creep wave to the opponent's tower, they now have some freedom to do stuff, because they're no longer trying to kill creeps, they're no longer trying to kill their opponent, they're just kind of sitting doing nothing. And so at this point, it would be possible for the caster to go and gank either top or bottom lane. And by doing so, because casters typically have some form of CC, it makes sense to put the caster in the lane where they can gank either top or bottom to help out, take a little bit of pressure off the jungler. Whereas if you were to put the bruiser in the middle lane, they could gank top or they could gank bottom, but neither would be terribly effective. And the caster, if at the top, could really only gank the middle lane. So you put the caster in the middle for flexibility in terms of ganking top or bottom lane if they win their lane. You put the tank in the jungle so that he can gank effectively with his crowd control, and you put the bruiser at the top lane because really that's the only place he has left to go. Now you may ask yourself, since the side lanes are more or less the same in terms of, you know, their buff placement and whatnot, why put 2 players on the bottom and 1 on the top instead of 2 on the top and 1 on the bottom? And the simple answer is that on Summoner's Rift, the dragon, which is an early game objective, is located on the bottom. Therefore, it's easier for a jungler, a caster, and 2 players to kill a dragon than it is for a jungler, a caster, and 1 player to kill the dragon. So in sense, you have 4 players converging on a dragon to kill it really quickly in the early game, versus 3 players. And so it's a better engagement, and you have a better chance of taking said dragon. Conversely, if your opponents are trying to take the dragon and you have 2 players bottom, they're a little bit more likely to be able to defend that dragon. And so you have, basically it's all about dragon control. Who gets to take those early game dragons and get that 190 gold for everyone on their team. And it may not sound like a big deal. It's like 190 gold, you know, sure, that's a little bit of money, but the thing is, it's over the entire team. Everybody gets 190 gold. And since the dragon spawns every 5 minutes, I believe, I'll have to look that up. The dragon spawns about every 5 minutes. So about every 5 minutes, you can be giving your team another 190 gold. And that adds up over the long term. And you'll see that if you watch games on the pro level, you'll see that people take, that they keep track even now of dragons in spectator mode. How many teams, you know, how many times has this team slain the dragon? How many times has this team slain the dragon? And that actually factors into how people go into the late game, especially the carries, because as you know, carries scale primarily on items and thus scale primarily on gold. Now, I've given you the sort of general team composition, where they go, and why. So that's really all I got for this episode. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at the link below. If you have an idea, a suggestion for an episode, please, again, email me at the link below. If you liked this video, please like, subscribe, favorite, whatever you want to do to show your support in a positive way. And if you have criticisms or flames, please, again, send them to the email at the link below, because I'm looking for ways to improve myself any way I can. So your help is appreciated. With that said, this episode is done. Please have an awesome time until I see you again. Keep on owning. Peace.